believe I'm still muted. All right, now I am unmuted. Great start to the final hour of Fantasy Fest 2025. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. If you've been here from the beginning, that is awesome. Shouts to you. Shouts to Welsh and Joey P and all the guests we've had on so far. It's been an awesome start to the fest. We are taking it home here, the final home stretch, the last hour of the show. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined by my co-host of the cycle, Mike Maher, and also joined by our guest for this segment, Eric Cross. I just realized, and I did know this already, but I didn't put two and two together, that I'm sitting here with a couple of Red Sox fans. So we're off to another really poor start to this segment as well. For that reason, I have to get as much Orioles gear behind me as I can. Guys, we are talking some must draft rookies for the next half hour. Maher, did you get Cross on this segment on purpose for the two Red Sox fans?
I did not, but I was happy to see, when he was the guest. I actually got into the sheet first and intentionally didn't take the Red Sox player that he took because I had a feeling he might take him. So I'm glad that he did.
You did take a Yankees prospect, so we will be going a little bit with your guys' rival. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I guess it was a happy accident here that we got two Red Sox fans. We can gang up on the Oriole fan here.
Yeah, they're I've had a few good years for a segment like this of being able to talk about rookies, maybe not so much this year. So I suppose I can make way for the guy that you're going to start us off with here, Eric, who is, of course, Red Sox huge breakout prospect from last year. I'll let you tee it up.
Yeah, no, Kristian Campbell maybe had the biggest breakout. There's a lot of breakouts every year, as there always are, but he might have been the biggest breakout of the 2024 season. And, he was a guy coming into the season that there was a bit of hype. It wasn't like he was a complete unknown. He was a fourth-round pick. There was a good base of tools already there. The hit tool, the speed. Those questions of how much power would he get to, and he answered those questions in spades last year, having one of the best all-round seasons offensively we've seen in quite some time. He had 20 home runs, 24 steals, / 330, 439. 558, flew up 3 levels. I saw him here. He was here. I'm near AA Portland for the Red Sox, and he was here for, I think it was about 55, 60 games, something like that, before he got the bump up to AAA. And he was as advertised. Every game I saw probably 15, 20 games of him. It was just spectacular watching him play, both offensively and defensively. The all-around package is there. The contact skills, even though he added power, sometimes that trade-off is maybe the contact goes down a little bit. Maybe that K rate goes up a little bit. That was not the case with Kristian Campbell last year. He still maintained contact rate right around 80% overall last year, while having the, phenomenal approach, walk rate under 20%. K rate under 20%, walk rate around 14%. While having above average quality of contact as well, and still running, well on the base pass and efficiently on the base pass as well. So he's gonna be one of those guys that just impacts the game in so many ways. Maybe brings multi-position eligibility. I'm still not even sure where he's gonna play for this Red Sox team this year. Last year he kind of almost split right down the middle, second base, shortstop, and outfield. And I think probably more so second base and outfield right now. But maybe Story gets hurt again, and he has to play some shortstop. So good chance you get multi-positional eligibility from him, and just really good 5-category production while not having to worry about a low average or anything like that. So he's not tearing it up right now in spring. It's looked better of late, but I'm still very much on board here, the hype train, and definitely confident that Campbell is going to have a very good career starting this year. So yeah, I've already gotten a lot of shares of him in redraft leagues, and I'll continue to do so here leading up to opening day.
Yeah, you mentioned redraft, by the way, just to be clear, since we're talking rookies, we're not looking at this through the prism of like keeper or dynasty. This is rookies that we're interested in drafting for redraft for the 2025 season. It doesn't get to be a more picture perfect breakout minor league season than what we got from Kristian Campbell last year. Like this is everything you could have possibly asked for if you're looking at him as a future fantasy asset, or as a Red Sox fan for your team. Where you said you have a lot of them already, Eric, where are you drafting? Because if you look at like his expert consensus ranking on FantasyPros, it's really low. It's like 300th or something overall. So where are you at what point in your draft saying this is where I'm going to take the swing on a really high upside rookie?
Yeah, so I've been getting him a lot in like the 250 to 280 range. I think his ADP is something like 280, 290, something like that. So I think I've been jumping ADP a little bit, not a ton though. But I've seen him also, get taken a round or two ahead of where I even wanted to take him, which is unfortunate. But That part of ADP this year is actually really fun. You got like Jackson Jobe in that range, Kumar Rocker. There's a lot of fun young players going in that range. Like Roman Anthony was going in there, but he's since kind of fallen into the 300s ADP wise. But yeah, I think anything after 250, I think you can afford to take a little bit more upside, risk there, even with, one of the top prospects. None of these guys are for sure. We know that. We've seen the top guys struggle. So, at that point in your draft, it's not going to hurt you too much if it doesn't work out. But obviously, the potential ROI is massive. Like, he could be a guy we're talking about as a top 100 draft pick at this time next year. So, yeah, I think that 250 to like 280 range, I think, is pretty fair for Kristian Campbell.
Maher, I'm assuming you pretty much agree with everything that Eric just said.
Yeah, for the most part, the biggest question, like Eric said, is he going to play? Is he going to be on the roster right away? There's questions about what the heck is going on with Rafael Devers right now. Everyone assumed Alex Bregman was going to be starting second baseman. He's been playing third base every day. And Kristian Campbell has been splitting time between second base and the outfield. And the Red Sox have a weird situation right now where they're not necessarily like super banged up injury-wise, but they have something going around their clubhouse where like a third of their roster is down with an illness. Like Wilyer Abreu is missed a bunch of time, Tristan Casas, Roman Anthony. And the other thing is that they need right-handed bats in their lineup, which is another kind of, factor helping Kristian Campbell potentially make the roster. I read a really good piece in The Athletic recently about how the Red Sox kind of just changed his swing after they drafted him. They really liked his contact ability, but they thought they could tap into more power. And they have. And it was an interesting read about how the Red Sox specifically are training, kind of their top three, and how they're really just like just throwing all kinds of stuff at them in the batting cages where they can use this tool to replicate like actual pitches from around the league. And they're just like trying to break their swings. And it's like working out really well for them. So the biggest question for him, ADP 287. So not a very expensive price tag, but like Cross said, you can potentially get positional eligibility for him. He could be second base outfield eligible, maybe even some shortstop. We'll see. And power speed combo that you can get really late in the draft. The only question is he going to be in the lineup and on the roster?
Is that 250, 280 range also where you would be looking to draft him, Maher?
Yeah, I have him in one draft. I waited like a little too long for him in TGFBI, which is a format I'm a little bit more nervous to take rookies in anyway, just because if you're wrong and he's not on the roster, it really kills you in a format like that. But if you're right, it really helps. But I didn't get him in that draft, but I did get him in a salary cap draft recently. So ADP doesn't help there because I had to pay a price for him. But yeah, ADP 287, I would be willing to take him a couple rounds before that, depending on like my roster build, just to have him on my bench for the upside.
We're all in agreement there. Maher, who's the first rookie you want to talk about?
Despite being a Red Sox fan, I'll go with Jasson Dominguez. And it hurts me to say that as someone who doesn't want the Yankees to do well. But I don't know. It feels like, and I'm interested to get Cross's opinion on this. It almost feels like we're getting, I don't know if it's like prospect fatigue or what's going on, but I feel like this was one of the top prospects in baseball. And it's like people forgot about it. His ADP is 140, like not super cheap, but also not expensive. And I mentioned this on an episode of The Cycle recently, and maybe I'm going a little bit too far with it, but like we talk about someone like Jackson Chourio, whose ADP is just shooting up right now. His ADP is 19. We just saw him go in the first round of a main event draft on NFBC, which is wild to see. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a world where Jackson Chourio kind of underperforms his projections and Jasson Dominguez slightly outperforms his projections. And I'm not talking about by a lot because the projections are not that far off, where Jasson Dominguez like outperforms Jackson Chourio or performs like very similarly 120 picks later in your drafts. Like power speed combo, if he hits well, should hit fairly high in that lineup. Really good home ballpark, and the Yankees need him, especially, with losing Juan Soto. We kind of salivated over the idea of like Jasson Dominguez learning from Juan Soto and kind of like coming up next to him. But now without him, they need him even more. And so I really, 120 picks after Jackson Chourio, not too like, dissimilar projections. It seems like a league winner to me.
Eric, what do you think about that? I know when we were planning out this segment, you had said like you were kind of sticking away from some of the more obvious names like Roki or Dylan Cruz. And you actually mentioned Dominguez as one of those names. But now that we're talking about him, what do you think about this, not comparison that Maher is making, but this difference in ADP between a guy like Chourio and Dominguez? Do you see them as it's a viable outcome that they might actually finish fairly close to each other by the end of the season?
I mean, I wouldn't entirely rule it out because Jackson Chourio, more of an aggressive hitter, that kind of leads to some prolonged slumps at times. Now, I'm not necessarily worried about a Jackson Chourio. Obviously, he's a phenomenal talent. Everyone knows that. But Dominguez could be a phenomenal talent as well. I mean, like, fast forward a year, we could be all sitting here talking, in March of 2026, and we're talking about, Dominguez is like a top 25, top 30 pick, something like that. So, the upside is there for Dominguez. And yeah, the fatigue, I mean, it helps that it's been really kind of an odd roller coaster, minor league career for Dominguez, because obviously he signed right in the year before the lost 2020 year. So he didn't even have a chance to really debut until I think it was roughly 2 years after he signed. And everyone remembers the Bo Jackson, Mickey Mantle, Mike Trout, just insanely ridiculous comps and unfair to put on a 16, 17-year-old prospect, or anybody for that matter. But then he rose up and, became one of the best prospects in the game. I like that little range there with him and Dylan Cruz, and like that 130, 140, 150 range of drafts, because at that point you probably already have, at least your outfield 1 and probably even your outfield 2, unless you really waited on the outfield. So for the most part, Dominguez should be like your outfield 3. And especially if you get, 2 outfielders that you feel good about, you want maybe a little bit on the safer side with your first 2 outfielders. You can afford to maybe go a little bit more upside with that outfield 3. Dominguez and Cruz absolutely could each, blow past their ADP. Dominguez with that massive power speed blend, that, more power from the left side, which obviously plays well at Yankee Stadium. I didn't think he'd still run this much after he was, putting up the big stolen base numbers in the low minors. I thought that would kind of fizzle out. It hasn't yet. And he's still showing the willingness to run. So yeah, really fun power speed blend there. So yeah, Dominguez could absolutely jump up there and get up into that elite range next year.
I'm definitely wary of the prospect fatigue because he is somebody, as you mentioned, that we've been hearing about for just so long. Still, obviously, really young, and I don't want to hold it against him that he maybe had a bit of a roller coaster of a minor league career, just given what we all believe the talent can be there. Let me put this question to you, Eric. If you had to predict right now, and we're not going to hold you to this a year from now, but if you had to predict right now, what do you think Dominguez's ADP will be for 2026 drafts?
I don't think it will get quite as high as where we're taking Chourio this year, but maybe it can get into like the Jackson Mayo range, which I think is like the low to mid 30s. Yes, I'll say like the 30 to 35 range, like back end of the second, early part of the third, and a 15 teamer. I think that's pretty realistic.
Same question, Maher.
Yeah, I was just looking up Wyatt Langford, because how's that for a comp of someone that people are really excited about this year? He's going 47. I could see Jasson Dominguez easily top 50 next year.
I do want to let everybody know before we get to the other players we're talking about that if you are tired of draft day uncertainty, the Cheat Sheet Creator is your personal guide to perfect league-specific rankings. Visualize your path to victory as you add tiers and sync your league to craft custom rankings, ensuring every pick is strategic and tailored to your league settings. You can sync your league and enter your draft with confidence using the Cheat Sheet Creator at fantasypros.com/sheet or on the Fantasy Baseball Draft Wizard app. All right, Eric, who is the other rookie you are drafting for 2025?
So I wanted to go a little bit, again, not super elite on this one, just to give a different name that I don't think enough people are talking about. And that's Jacob Melton, outfield prospect with the Houston Astros. The Houston outfield right now is kind of in flux. They're running Jose Altuve out there. I don't know how I feel about that. To be honest, I don't know how long that sticks. And outside of him, there's a lot of question marks in that outfield right now. Chas McCormick's penciled in. Jake Myers is penciled in. They've each had a little bit of time in the spotlight. Had some good months, and McCormick had a good full season where he almost went 2020 a couple years ago. But that is not an outfield that's got to really hold anybody back. And, Jacob Melton is, close already. I don't think he's going to be out there on opening day. But this is a guy that got to AAA last year, was there for about 2 months or so, and had a really solid overall season. 15 home runs, 30 steals, and just 105 games. This after an absolutely massive season in 2023, where he went 23-46 in just 99 games between AA and high A that year. Just a phenomenal minor league power speed career for him. And even though the average has kind of been a little bit on the lower side. The contact skills are solid. It was near 80%. He had a nearly identical contact rate to a Kristian Campbell last year overall. And just solid power in the profile. He's a plus runner as well. So kind of what you're seeing, maybe he could be a 15, 20 homer guy, 20, 25 steals, something like that, with a solid average. So even if he's not out there on opening day, I mean, the odds of the Altuve, McCormick, Jake Myers trio, like being the trio for the entire season, I think is incredibly slim. So maybe 0% chance of that. So I think the next one up is going to be Melton, because it's not like they have really anybody on the bench that's like, oh, that guy could step in. Now, the bench is pretty underwhelming, especially for outfield options. So they probably look to go, unless they sign somebody off the scrap heap from free agency, probably go from within. And I think Jacob Melton will be the first guy to get the call as arguably their top prospect right now, or number 2 behind the recently acquired Cam Smith, who might even break camp in the outfield. Like, they're trying a lot of things. I mean, even Cam Smith's getting some run in the outfield after being a corner infielder all of his life. So Melton, I think, maybe not a guy you're looking to draft now, but someone that, given the power speed blend, definitely needs to be on your radar. And that's still a good lineup, even without Kyle Tucker. And obviously it's a very good ballpark. So I think he could put up a kind of a sneaky fun fantasy season once he gets the call.
Is he somebody that you are like trying to actually sneak into your draft with your final pick, or is he somebody that you're more, I want to have him on my watch list and just be ready to pounce when he does get the call up?
In the deeper formats, I'm in the tout league draft and hold. I just took him in round like 41, 42, something like that. So for most people, playing in 12, 15 teams where you're, the overall draft is 250, 300, 350 players, something like that, depending on the bench and whatnot. You're probably not drafting a Jacob Melton, and I wouldn't be looking to draft him either in that scenario. But you definitely a guy to keep on your radar, given the power speed blend. And anybody that's playing in those deeper, maybe a 40-round best ball or a 50-round draft and hold, a draft champions over on NFBC, those types of formats. He is one of my favorite targets in those, like the last quarter of those drafts. So yeah, definitely a target there, and just a fun player to monitor in the more 12, 15 team leagues.
Maher, where do you think Melton is currently ranked in ECR on the site? Because I'm going to venture a guess that he is the lowest ranked player we are talking about on all of Fantasy Fest today.
I don't know where he's ranked. I did look up his ADP beforehand, and it is, I didn't actually know ADP went this deep. It's 726. So basically
that's very close to his ECR, which is currently 715. He's behind such names as Jonathan Loizaga, Victor Vodnik, Eli Morgan. Stop me when it's a name that you've heard before. He's very, very lowly ranked, which is why he's maybe a really interesting, person to throw out here. Do you have any thoughts on Melton, Maher, as a guy you're stashing or interested in certainly one of your deeper leagues?
Well, for starters, I would definitely defer to Cross on a deep sleeper prospect like this. He knows more than me. I did look at his profile, obviously preparing for the segment. The one thing, and Cross mentioned it as he was talking, the one thing that kind of stuck out to me that I don't love in his profile is throughout the minor leagues batting in like the 240, 250 range. Maybe it's a little old school of me. I really prefer to see like 280 and above, like in the minor leagues, especially like in some of the lower levels, because it's hard to see a guy like bat 240, 250 in AA and AAA and expect him to hit that or above in the major leagues. Now, obviously he's still younger. He still has a chance to get better, but that does concern me. But like power speed combo, you can see on the screen here, the projections, 215 batting average, not great. But we've talked a bunch before about how projections are always going to be super conservative. They also don't have him projected to play many games. They have 37 to 50 games consensus projections. So a lot of this is kind of banking on the narrative that Cross talked about, that he's going to play his way onto the field, which is certainly possible. It's just a matter of, do you put him on your watch list? Do you have the roster space to kind of stash him? It can sometimes be harder to stash prospects versus injured players, since you can't like put them on the IL unless it's a keeper dynasty and you have like minor league slots. It can be a little bit harder to stash a player like Jacob Melton. And in a lot of the shower leagues, you won't have to. You'd be able to, put him on your watch list and kind of read the tea leaves and see if it's coming, and still be a week or two early before he gets called up, and have no problem getting him on your team.
Yeah, Mayor, you and I have a draft in one of our leagues that we're both in coming up soon. It's a very deep keeper league with minor league spots. Maybe we'll get in a bidding war for Jacob Melton in that league, and we'll confuse everybody else who missed this segment. You got one more rookie here that you want to talk about, Mayor, and this is somebody that Eric also threw out as somebody he wanted to talk about too. So you guys are in lockstep here.
Perfect. So I already stole this name from Kelly Kirby because she mentioned it a couple of weeks ago on the cycle. And then earlier in Fantasy Fest, Ryan Bloomfield talked him up. So I'm double stealing him. And that's Matt Shaw, ADP 240, like 2020, 2030 power speed potential. Should be the starting third baseman for the Cubs. He's a name that a few weeks ago you had probably never heard of or hadn't heard much of. And my guess is that this ADP is only going to continue to rise as more and more people kind of pay attention to what's going on in Chicago. And we start to see the projections update a little bit and see like how deep of a sleeper he is. Like I said, ADP 240. I'm guessing we're going to finish with him as an ADP inside the top 200. And, like I said, I already stole him from Kelly Kirby. Ryan Bloomfield already talked him up earlier. And as he was talking about it, the chat was going nuts with everyone like hyping up Matt Shaw. So I think, the hype is coming and the ADP is going to rise accordingly.
I want to be really clear that, yes, I have heard of him. If you notice, next to my Oriole is a Maryland Terrapins little decoration there. He a Terp, one of the few good baseball Terps we have. So, yeah.
I assume that was not your surgically repaired arm that you just did
no,
a full 180 with?
You'll notice I'm only moving my left arm because my right arm it's not in the sling right now, but it is not allowed to move. I still have a few weeks left where it really should be in the sling. So
I was going to say, I can't do that yet.
No, definitely the other arm for sure. But yeah, no, obviously, like I've been watching Matt Shaw like since he was in college. Have been a huge fan for a while. Thought he was a great pick by the Cubs the year they took him. I have liked him throughout the minors. I am in total agreement with you guys on him. Eric, like I said, this was a name that you had also thrown out as somebody you wanted to talk about too.
Yeah, no, I love Matt Shaw. And quick shout out to another Maryland Terp that I like a lot this year, Sean Burke with the White Sox. I think he's sneaky good. I mean, not going to get many wins, but definitely rack up the strikeouts, though. So I like Burke a lot. But Shaw, I've always said that Shaw's like the elite prospect that doesn't get talked about enough when you're talking about elite prospects, because he's not the flashiest profile. Like there's no one tool that's like, oh, he has huge power, huge speed, it's just a really good all-around profile of above average tools. Like this is a guy he's always hit for good average, got on the base at a solid clip. Last year started off a little bit slow, but then the final, like 2/3 or so of the minor league season, he went 20-20 in like 80 something games. So, I think 2020 type of guy for that third base spot is really valuable. Obviously, outside of Joe Ram, there's not a ton of speed at the third base position. That is a little bit more than there used to be, but still not a position you look to get speed from. So if you're getting potentially 20 steals right now this year from Matt Shaw with maybe 20 home runs and a decent average, you're going to like that a lot. And given that they just said he's going to make the trip over to Japan for that series in a week and a half, you're definitely going to see that ADP rise because him being a top 10 to 20 prospect, depending on where you look. I have him top 10. I have him I think 7th or 8th, something like that. I think you're going to see a really good first season from him. He's always hit well everywhere he's gone. A high floor type of guy as well. So obviously there's never any sure thing, as I mentioned before. But Shaw is a guy that I feel better about the most, like kind of hitting the ground running and not having like massive struggles as a prospect. So yeah, I like Matt Shaw a lot. And I think he's going to have a really good year and be a top 100 guy next year.
And the ADP, like we've talked about, is not prohibitive in the slightest. So yeah. I will be drafting all the Matt Shaw if the leagues I'm in will let me. Before we get to some questions and comments from the chat, I do just want to remind everybody that it is your last chance to win a signed Chris Sale jersey. We are giving it away in the final segment of this Fantasy Fest. So coming up in just a few minutes. All you have to do to enter is subscribe to the FantasyPros MLB YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment on this stream. And that's it. We will be announcing one lucky winner right here in the final segment. Like I said, just a few minutes away. So stay tuned and send in those comments. We've got a super chat here from Thunderstud, which is a great name. He says he hears very little about Tyler Stephenson and is wondering why. Why do you think that is, Maher?
First and foremost, because he's a catcher. I think that would be the, no offense to the catchers of the world, but that would be the main reason. He's a catcher. He's catcher 11 right now in ADP, and so he's like a late round catcher. Obviously, he's historically hit for like a decent average, not as high the last couple of years, has some decent power potential. But I also think we kind of just know who he is at this point. And so I don't know why we would be hearing about him unless there's something obvious that I'm missing. No offense to the question, of course. Keep the questions coming. But yeah, I think Cross, do you disagree?
I mean, I think Stephenson is actually sneaky good. I mean, look at the metrics. I'm not gonna say he's gonna be better than this guy, but look at the metrics. Contact rates, quality of contact, etc. Compared him to Adley, their metrics last year were very similar. Adley was dealing with a little bit of something last year, and I'm not saying I take him over there, but I'm not
going to fall out of his chair right now.
I mean, that wasn't a knock on Adley whatsoever. It was more so, saying that if you're like in a single catcher format, obviously these guys get pushed up on the two catcher formats, but if you're in a single catcher format and you don't want to spend that top 100 pick on Adley or Ian or Diaz or William Contreras or whoever, and you want to wait to kind of one of the last rounds to fill your guy because you can, you still get a pretty solid guy. He's actually a really good one. I was kind of like all in him and Murphy before Murphy got hurt as a bounce back play. I think Stevenson's sneaky good. Give you a solid average, 15 to 20 home runs. Yeah, I kind of like him and where he's going.
Yeah, and I know I talked down about the question a little bit, but I also like what I meant by like we know who he is like I think he's like fine. Like
yeah, he's not a stud, but yeah, he's solid. Absolutely.
We got a question here from Welsh, who just finished being on this show for 3 hours and is now in the chat. So shouts to Welsh.
Who's
that? He says, based on 5x5 categories, who wins, Jasson Dominguez or Matt Shaw? What do you think about that one, Eric?
So I know who Welsh is going to say because I me and Welsh talk a lot, obviously, and I know who his number one prospect is. But for this year, I mean, I love both these guys, but I would lean Jasson Dominguez. I think you could probably see a higher average from Shaw, but I think the power speed blend tips over to Jasson. So I think maybe if you want to go a little more conservative and go with the safer option and wait another few rounds to get a Matt Shaw, infielder as well, that helps. But I think the upside, we could see, like we both kind of said, Mike, we could see Dominguez as a top 50 ADP next year. Not quite sure we see, maybe Matt Shaw could be top 100, and I'm not like 100% ruling out top 50, but I think better chance of Dominguez getting into that top 50 range than Shaw.
Maher, these were the two guys you brought up for this segment. So who do you like better?
I mean, I would go with Dominguez, and it seems like consensus agrees. He's going 100 picks before Matt Shaw. So for everything, Cross just said, I think, I would go Dominguez for sure, but, we'll see.
I have to throw in a Baltimore question here. Will Coby Mayo have more than 150 at-bats in Baltimore this year? I sure hope so. I was actually just talking with Maher about this in Slack just yesterday, that I have a real issue with the way Brandon Hyde uses his non-elite prospects when they finally get to the big league level. Like unless you're on the level of Adley or Gunnar, he plays a lot of playing time games and tends to give, I think, a little too many at-bats to the veterans. So 150 is not a lot. I'm going to say yes, but knowing Brandon Hyde, I wouldn't be totally surprised if that's not the case. Erickson, shouts to him, saying baseball season. Let's squeeze in one very quick last question here. How about this one from Iron Mike? 9th overall pick, 5x5 head-to-head, just because we've talked a bit about Chourio already. Jackson Chourio or Kyle Tucker? Maher, quickly, who you got?
Kyle Tucker.
Cross?
Agreed. I mean, Chourio's great, but Tucker he's a stud. Yep, absolutely Tucker.
Yep, we agree across the board. All right, we'll wrap up this segment here.